All right, welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio. This is NBDA President Heather Mason. This is the NBDA News Hour. It's co-hosted with our friends from Human Powered Solutions. Today, I'm joined by micromobility experts Jay Townley, Fred Clements, and Mike Fritz. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I absolutely love this podcast feature. Thank you all for continuing to do this. It's really keeping our listeners very much informed. Hey, listeners, the team at Human Powered Solutions has over 245 years of experience, considered data wizards. They have a monthly newsletter called the Micromobility Reporter. This resource is very dynamic and features timely news and in-depth analysis about the latest in human-powered transportation. They cover bicycles, e-bicycles, scooters, and rideshare. I highly suggest that everyone listening goes ahead and subscribes to receive this newsletter in an email. Very easy to do that. Head over to humanpoweredsolutions.com. And monthly, this news feature on Bicycle Retail Radio dives a little bit deeper into those articles so we can get a, let's say, firsthand seat with the experts. All right, so let's get into today. The recent newsletter is titled A Startup Boom, Tech Meltdown, and the Hottest Day on Earth. And I want to start right at the top with the news from the bicycle retailer Brain trade publication. The article is Trek to begin direct-to-consumer sales through Consumer Choice Program. If you're in the industry, I'm sure you have already heard the news that Trek announced. And the program summarized is that Trek ships the bike to the retailer from its inventory and processes the transaction. So when a consumer orders online, Trek ships the bike to the retailer from the Trek's inventory. Retailers receive a 35 to 25% margin plus a $100 delivery fee. All right, we'll get into it. According to Trek, premium home delivery gives amazing opportunities for hospitality and creates lifelong customers. With in-store pickup for a bike retailer, it helps the retailer use their stock through Locally, who helps process the sale. It's integrated with trekbikes.com. So Trek says it's not going to double ship. If you, the retailer, have the bike in stock, you'll get the sale. And in that case, the retailer receives the regular margin minus the Locally fee of 3.5%. A little bit more to it, but that's basically the nuts and bolts on it. So I wanted to ask the experts. Fred, you've been doing this for years. Jay as well. Mike, what are your thoughts on the program? Is it fair for the retailer? Yeah, let's dive right in.
Go ahead, Fred.
Okay. I think it'll, at first glance, my reaction was negative, of course, because the retailer has long been the only contact point for certain brands. And I like that, local focus, local businesses. But it's understandable as things evolve that Trek, as other vendors also, want to be able to address a national market when someone goes to their website curious about a bicycle to actually be able to do the sale at that point. And so this seems like their move to make that happen. Certainly, it's not the retailer's choice. This is something Trek is doing, and you make the best of it. I think some of the nuances and complications of the program will flesh out over time. Mm-hmm. I do wonder, how much impact, other than the perceived insult factor, that we're going to go consumer direct, how much market share can Trek.com actually begin to get? I question whether it's going to be a lot if the local retailers are doing their jobs. But it did, so I'll just chat a little bit and then pass it on. But I think a couple of concepts come to mind. And one is many vendors, many brands talk about partnership and that we are partners. And it's always made me a little uncomfortable, that term, because it's not necessarily a partnership. It's not like you're married, where you get married once and it's a lifetime commitment and you just go. No, the dealer agreements are very one-sided. It's renewable annually. And so I prefer the term relationship. You have a relationship with the brand, not necessarily a partnership. And there are some aspects that are partnership and some that are just relationship. The partnership talk to me seems overly positioned to pretend that everything's happy when it is a relationship. There are pluses and minuses to all of this. So um, I think for the retailer, it's a give and take situation. You take what's in your best interest and you give what's in the brand's best interest. Hopefully you can work together and sell as many bikes as possible. So a couple of things popped into my head. And one, I think when this has happened with other brands, consumers will make mistakes. You know, when they order their own bike online, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to get the wrong size, the color they didn't like. Who's going to fix that? Well, it seems to me the local retailer, as long as Trek is willing, is in a perfect position to resolve some of those errors and become the hero in the customer's eye that probably Trek from one location nationally isn't going to be able to resolve as happily. The other thing, as Trek noted in the press release, the whole notion of giving the local retailer an opportunity to build a relationship with that customer, I think that's a real advantage. That if certainly if a bike is shipped to you, the retailer, for assembly and delivery to the consumer, that's a perfect opportunity for a relationship. Question I had is, what if it's a direct to consumer right through Trek.com? Is the retailer even going to know who that purchaser is and even have the opportunity to reach out and develop an independent relationship? I don't know. Hopefully that is, and if not, the retailer should push for that, because the follow-up sale, to offer warranty checks, whatever it is, if the retailer doesn't really know if the consumer, sorry, doesn't really know the local retailer, it's in Trek and the consumers and the retailer's best interest to make that connection. So it seems that one of the valuable aspects to the retailer is being able to add a customer to their database that they may not have otherwise, and to be able to make offers and special, try to build a relationship that way. You do have local advantages that Trek.com probably doesn't have. And so my advice, and I've kind of vented a little bit before, is to take Trek down, like outcompete them. And so, when someone does a web search, what pops up first for Trek in your marketplace? You should at least be somewhere there. And so what's the incentive for the consumer to go to Trek.com? Well, maybe they don't know about you. And so it seems that you have an opportunity to make that sale and make that relationship. And I think you are the touch point for Trek. Maybe the consumer doesn't even know that they're buying from a national company, Trek.com. What makes you not Trek for that consumer? If you can touch them and reach out to them, you're Trek, because you're an authorized Trek retailer.
Yeah.
So be Trek, be everything that they can't do nationally, and to try to build those relationships. And so the rest of it, how it all works out, I love the idea of getting a margin and never touching the bike. But the consumer relationship, that information so that you can reach out, that has a lot of value. And as long as that's part of the equation, I guess I've come from being, oh my, this is bad, to got to see it through. It's not like the retailers made the decision, Trek made the decision. And because it is a relationship, not a partnership, I think, those are my thoughts anyway.
I mean, Fred,
Well,
yeah, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
no, I'll add to that something that Fred knows well, and that's Harley Phillips. Harley Phillips is a past president of the NBDA. And Harley and I crossed paths originally in the 1970s when we were both doing seminars for bike shops at the NBDA shows, by the way. This is before Interbike. But here's the point. There is in the lexicon, in the history of the bike shop trade, a thing called the Phillips rule. And it's simple. Harley told dealers and started doing this when we were still using gels with overhead projectors and looking at financial statements, that look, you never sell anything in your bike shop below your cost of doing business. Now, I know, Heather, you're going to have the new cost of doing business study out shortly. We'll be able to focus on that probably in a subsequent call. You certainly will be doing it on webinars, but cost of doing business. Your cost of doing business is simple. It's everything it costs you to be in business. And then at the end of the day, you take what you make in the way of revenue, you subtract the cost of doing business, and that's your margin. That's what you make.
Mhm.
I think what the Trek situation represents is good for Trek. It should be. This is Trek's plan, as Fred said. However, I think for bike shops, it's becoming probably death by 1,000 cuts. How long can we go as bike shops having brands laying out percentages? And Heather, you gave a nice objective view of it, but I mean, they're talking 5% here, 6% here, 8% if you do this. It's quite a complex program, good for Trek, probably good for some dealers. I can't imagine whom, but some dealers. But the bottom line here is that dealers are the brand, as Fred points out. Dealers are the brand in their community, the strength of the relationship in the community. And in turn, it's the relationship with the consumer and the community.
Mhm.
So I think what this is presented is, as presented, is good for Trek because this is Trek's strategy. I think dealers have to look carefully if this is their strategy and how this will fit into the basic Phillips rule.
Mhm.
Now, there's exceptions. Fred and I have talked for years about this. There's exceptions to the Phillips rule. There's stuff you got to get rid of. There's inventory you got to blow out. There's stuff that you need to put on sale to get rid of to turn into cash. Yeah, you do that carefully. But I think what dealers have to do now is weigh all of this in these times against their plan, against their profitability. Brands are one thing. A bicycle shop is in business for the owners. And it's making sure that the bike shop is able to realize at the end of the day a fair profit for their labor and activity and for their investment against the cost of doing business. And if the Trek plan, the way it's laid out with all the percentages, doesn't work out for a dealer, I think a dealer has to take a real serious look at whether they continue the relationship with somebody else.
Yeah, Jay, you bring up several good points. I was in a P2 retailer meeting when this was announced. And, the first thought from the group was, what will the retailer reaction be, across North America, United States? And then, how many bikes, what will the impact really be? If we look at when Canyon, was introduced and how they have actually done, it didn't quite move the needle the way that Canyon, I think, thought it would. The consensus what I'm hearing from retailers is, okay, it's not bad. There's some kinks to work out. It doesn't seem to be overwhelmingly negative or positive. It's just like, okay, it's what's happening. But the reminder and the great reminder that all retailers should listen to is this is happening, and this is going to be a trend that we're going to see more companies move to, and margins might continue to shrink like this, and we have to be the best business people that we can be. And that's having a great business plan, having a marketing and sales strategy, and really dialed in to your business operations, which I think is what human powered solutions basically suggests. And that's what you're saying, Jay. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we leave it there, right? Yeah, I just wanted to ask the experts to give our listeners, because it was a topic that was pretty hot for a while, and now it just kind of seems like we're moving forward.
The issue of dealer profitability will bring this to the surface again. The issues of relationships against partnerships. It's already come up in the trade press. It's going to come up in our newsletter again. Fred is quite correct. The partnership issue, the term is hackneyed. It's overused in the bicycle business to the point where dealers don't trust it. And it's a relationship, and relationships, as many of your members that I applaud, and members of your board of directors and members of P2 groups I applaud, because their mantra is that we examine every brand relationship every year for what it's going to do for our business.
I like the way you phrased it, Fred. Partnership is like marriage, relationship is like not. Like it's a little different, right? I'm not good at either. So I'll just put that out there. All right, let's move on. Too personal. The next topic I want to dive into is the article from Retail Dive. It basically says that US online retail sales are continuing to capture market share, and primarily from store-based retailers. So this would be like someone going on to Jay's Bike Store, who has a, let's say, a work stand website, just for the sake of saying, and purchases off of Jake's Bike Store or Jay's Bike Store via his website. And Human Powered Solutions is saying, hey, okay, if this is the case, we're seeing this, that the market share is going up, we're going to suggest that retailers, from what I read here, that you're suggesting that retailers work with their web provider or service provider to see if they can sync with suppliers who have warehouses, so the retailer doesn't have to take the inventory in-house, but can capture some of those online sales. Is that correct, Jay?
Yes, it is. And that's what some of the providers, Workstand is an example, and others are offering, and the POS services too, by the way, are offering the service so that a retailer can tie their inventory into brand inventories, which is great. So the consumer sees what's called a long shelf. But I think the point here is that not only is online here to stay, it's growing. And it was projected and predicted to grow by people in the retail trade. That's really part of what John Burke said in his message that we go back to this first article. John's correct in stating that there are a growing number of consumers who want to do shopping on the internet and buy on the internet. But if you look at the other data that goes along with this particular report about online growing, it also says that consumers who are doing their shopping online in growing numbers are going back to the physical store to touch and feel and to talk about the product with experts.
Okay.
They seek out local experts, the local expert in the shop. So I'm back to, they want to get their information. We're dealing with a different consumer to begin with. Consumers shifted buying habits. Consumers don't trust retailers. Consumers want to make their own choices. Okay, they go on the internet, they do the research, they come into the store now better prepared. Doesn't mean they're absolutely right, but better prepared. The shops have to be sure they're training their employees to understand that. Because again, we've got too many shop employees to this day that tend to do core dumps, that tend to take all of their knowledge and dump it on a poor consumer who may or may not know, but certainly doesn't want the core dump. What they want is respect. And so that's what these internet consumers are going to want. They've done their research. It may be wrong, but you gentle them through the process. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you learned that. Well, here's something you didn't consider. And here we can apply this to these products. There's a whole sales pattern here, but the key is internet is now pushing consumers back to physical retail stores to look at the product. And in our case, we've got a test ride we can build in for all of our products. And we've got an expert. They want to talk to somebody that knows, somebody that can really say, yeah, you're right, but you've only got a part of the story. Let me tell you the rest of it and show you the rest of the story. Let me share the expertise. So I think there's a huge golden opportunity for the bike shops, starting with commerce-enabled websites, then working with your providers to make sure that you could tap into the vendor inventory where the relationship wants to do that. And there are many that do, by the way, and that's growing, including used bikes. And then in turn, make sure you're very aware that you got to train staff to just accept everybody that comes in and talk to them. And make sure that you're not talking down to them, you're accepting what they're saying, what they've learned, and then you add your own expertise to it, and it's on the path to a sale and a satisfied customer.
Yeah. I mean, lots of your, I guess, like keeping it high level. So if you're a retailer listening, let's make sure that website is dialed, so easy to navigate on a cell phone or on a web platform, and then easy to shop, click and collect options, supplier sync from warehouses. Really make sure that website is monitored as well, as far as cart abandonment, questions asked, and you can really maximize that channel. I want to get Mike into the conversation. Mike, I'm always glad to have you here. I see big news out of New York. As a New Yorker, I see the government has signed into law a package to enhance lithium-ion battery safety standards that includes recognizing UL testing standards. I see they also noted EN. The New York State Senate passed the legislation in late May, and it will become law in 90 days. So that's now. Mike, what do we know, and how do you expect other states to follow?
You know, as we've said in the Micromobility Reporter, this is a great step forward. You know, we're developing and distributing and selling more sophisticated product with higher capabilities to more people, and the chances for issues associated with substandard product or improper use, you know, on the highways and byways increases with the increase in use. So I think New York, obviously, based on their experience, that's been kind of the epicenter, if you will, not only with respect to the lithium-ion battery fires, but also with respect to e-bike pedestrian incursions and accidents and injuries and even deaths. So I'm sure the New York government has been, the legislature in New York City has been under a lot of pressure to do something, and they have. And I do believe that this is appropriate, given the elevation of our products into a new class of micromobility. We keep using that term all the time. So this is good. We have some issues, though, with respect to the laws themselves. You know, they're basically saying, you know, you can use this standard or that standard. You know, you just have to meet a standard. I think that's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is the fact that the EN standard speaks to a different product. You know, EN regulations limit the power only 250 watts. They ban throttles, which are ubiquitous in the United States. You know, the speed limitations are such. EN 15194 requires a maximum speed of 24 kilometers per hour, about 15 miles per hour. So it's already, American bikes are already in violation of the EN standards if they have a throttle, if they're more than 250 watts, and if they can go more than 24 kilometers per hour. So, you know, we're starting off with a hobbled situation. And I think that comes out of trade associations and a lot of lobbying on behalf of, you know, some of the major players in the marketplace, thinking, oh, you know, we already sell bikes in Europe. We can play with that standard. Let's let that be the standard in America. But the reality is it's not. It's not. It's a different class of product, and they're dissimilar standards. So I think it's setting up a scenario whereby there's going to be a lot of confusion. You know, whose standard are you going to comply with? And we know that there are standards in the pipeline right now that will become mandatory standards mandated by the federal government that sooner or later are going to supersede any other standards that people are throwing about now. So it's just, I think it's setting up a scenario for a lot of confusion. It's just, I would have preferred that they say, okay, for the electrical system, you have to comply with UL standards, because that's a standard. It's ubiquitous. It's international. You know, it's been recognized by the U.S. regulatory agencies. And we anticipate that sooner or later, it's going to be the standard of choice adopted by the federal standards. Now, again, it only speaks to the electrical system and the battery, which are key components that require, in my mind, regulation and specifications. It doesn't speak to the mechanicals, but the mechanicals are not going unnoticed. You know, the government, we're not quite sure if they're going to go with the ANSI standard or they're going to develop their own. But the point is there will be a standard that is comprehensive with respect to the whole product. So in my mind, the smart manufacturers, the smart distributors would be lining up for what we anticipate with a high degree of certainty is going to become reality. So it's just, you know, why muddy the waters that are already well muddied, you know, with the potential for further confusion. So you know, I applaud New York for being proactive, and it's not only with respect to product standards. They're also requiring reporting relative to sales. They're requiring reporting relative to accidents, which is really good. That's one of the big hindrances that we've had to deal with, is there aren't really good statistics as to what are the issues, how many people are being hurt, how many batteries are failing. You know, we need to know all that, and mandatory registration and mandatory requirement or reporting requirements are going to help. So congratulations, New York. Thank you. But don't, you know, you're 95% of the way there. You could have been 100%. So
yeah, and you know, it is nice to see more suppliers obtaining the UL certification and going through the process. And the next question I was going to ask you was about People for Bikes and their work in getting these 7 new e-bike bills signed into law. But I feel like, I felt like when I was reading the Micromobility Reporter that Human Powered Solutions didn't feel like those laws really addressed all the safety concerns. And Mike, I feel like that might have been what you were just referring to, that we just need to get behind, we're just muddying the waters and we're just going in a circle by not just focusing on the UL.
Exactly. All due respect to People for Bikes. I mean, it's wonderful that we have a proactive trade association in our industry. We need that. We need it. But right now, they're doing a couple of things that I think sooner or later are going to result in some issues. The 3-class system. The class 3 bikes are illegal by definition. They violate the mandatory CPSC standard, CFR 1612 or 1512. It's kind of like, let's synchronize these things. I mean, laws are laws and they're there to be complied with. And by generating a class of product that is in direct conflicts with an existing law, I think is dangerous. Mm-hmm. Now, we've heard the attorneys speak, and we've heard that NHTSA and DOT and CPSC are looking very closely at this. They're taking sort of a hands-off opinion, waiting to see what the results of this new class, if you will, that conflicts with the mandatory requirements. But the point is let's all get together. Let's understand what is and what will be required, and draft our policies accordingly.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And then as I made my way through the Reporter, I saw the article that from Bloomberg, how e-bikes won over Europe, and it's speaking to battery powered bicycles now outselling pedal only ones across several European countries. And Mike, I know you work diligently with many companies when it comes to e-bike safety and promotion in general. So I'm expecting you have a good overview of what's happening. Do you expect this to happen in the States as well? Or maybe Jay, or Fred, you could chime in here too.
Just from my perspective, Heather, obviously, I hope so. This is our industry and we'll benefit as the industry grows. I just think that the adoption in the US is not going to be as rapid as what happened in Europe and in the EU countries. And I think it's grounded in the fact that there's some major cultural differences. Bikes have always been respected as a legitimate form of transportation in Europe. When kids are born, they grow up seeing their parents commuting on bikes, their parents using it to go to church and go to the store and go to work and whatnot. We don't have that here. We've been an automobile mentality. Bikes were for kids. And with the advent of electric bikes and the fact that it's a more practical or more effective mode of transportation, I think people are beginning to understand that. But I think the cultural differences are going to slow it down. It's going to slow down the adoption in the US. And I find myself to be a classic case. I mean, I've been in this industry my whole life. I got a garage full of e-bikes. Yet do I go to the store on my e-bike? It's not that far. I certainly have bikes that can maintain the range, but it's just, the automatic default is jump in the car and go. And I think that is going to hinder the adoption of e-bikes. I think it will come, with the climate crisis and the health and fitness crisis or motivations and whatnot. I think we'll grow, but slowly, nowhere near at the same rate as the EU. And then there's the whole infrastructure question as well, and the respect that drivers have for cyclists in Europe and the disdain that the drivers have for cyclists in the US. It's going to happen, but it's going to take a lot longer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything that Mike said. And just add a piece here, and I'll make it quick. Lobbying. The American traditional lobby, and I, speaking as the only first person I think among the four of us has worked as a professional lobbyist, since I was a registered lobbyist at the federal side and also in a number of states, and I worked with Fred and the NBDA from a lobbying standpoint. But there's good lobbying, there's bad lobbying, and we see it every day if you dig into what's going on in Washington and in the states. And from the standpoint of what you're referring to, Heather, is and what Mike is referring to, in my opinion, we've got a trade association that does some good and other things are not so good. And part of that is we've got a trade association that has been very vocal. In fact, there's a Brain article out about it that we've covered in one of the Micromobility Reporters, about how the People for Bikes organization, who we belong to, has taken a position that they're very proud of some of the things that they were able to do relative to the EN standard, as an example. And Mike's already explained why that is a problem. But it's what some of their members want because they already sell in Europe and they already comply with the EN standard. And so why not just bring it over to the US? Mike's already explained the differences. Our products are different. Our laws are different. Our consumers different. And so we have to go with what the American market is going to require. But the lobby, the ability to put money into putting professional lobbyists in front of legislators to amend and adjust legislative action, and in this case, ordinances from a city like New York, where you've got 8 million people, which is big as some of the Western states, gives you an idea of what can happen when lobbying is allowed to go in both good and bad directions, and give you basically what the members want, as opposed to, quite frankly, what's right.
The other thing I might add, that might be a detriment. I'm not sure, Mike and Jay, maybe you know better than I, but I see just reckless disregard for the existing laws around here. I was coming back from the grocery store yesterday,
Yeah.
and there was a quote e-bike in the bike lane. I decided to pace him to see how fast he was going 35. And that's an e-bike. So if we end up with a huge safety problem because of unregulated, I mean, the regulations are one aspect, be in compliance, but it appears to be a real risk, the recklessness of out of category e-bikes that I'm seeing all around.
Mhm.
Agree 100%, Fred.
Yeah, I do too.
There's one other aspect to this, and it's somewhat technical, and it's probably open for debate, but it's been suggested that the UL requirements for the electrical system are more stringent, especially as it relates to the battery, than the EU requirements. And clearly when it comes to something as important as lithium-ion battery safety, the most stringent regulation will offer the best protection to the customers. So on balance, it's a better scenario for North America and the United States.
Mhm. And then staying on the US, just on the data side, there was a topic that highlighted for our listeners, just so you know, micromobility ridership is up 16% in US cities in 2023. And this could be, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but bike, scooter, ride share, as well as public transport, but micromobility ridership up 16%. You think it might be good because it could lead to more people purchasing units. Makes sense to me. They try something and then they want to buy their own. Jay, is that, you take this as a positive sign?
I do. Micromobility use, or the use of rideshare, went down during the COVID. I thought it would have gone up, but no, the numbers show it went down, but it's resurged and it's continuing to grow. And that's not just in the United States, it's around the world. Now, scooters are getting a worse reputation than bikes for, again, the reasons Fred points out, and that's abuse relative to speed and where they're used. But overall, this increase, I think, is very, very positive for the bicycle business, because it literally is putting more people on bicycles, on e-bikes in particular. And it's a chance to try the product. It's also a means of taking people who are in between, who financially can't quite go and buy their own e-bike yet, or they're in a state where they can't get a rebate for it or a subsidy for it. And it allows them to use it for transportation, get used to it, like it, and then eventually, when they can come up with the wherewithal to be able to buy it. So yes, I think this increase, and there will be more increases in micromobility. And this is in the phase 2, Heather, as you might point out, or know. For instance, subway riding in New York is down.
Yeah.
Public transportation, bus riding is down. There's a lot of reasons for that. But the micromobility side, the e-bikes in New York are up in use, and they're putting more stations in. This is true in New York. It's true in Chicago. And you might have noticed that the city of Los Angeles, in accepting the next Summer Olympics, has said that they want to become a car-free society, or a car-free city for that event. And they want the transportation to be by micromobility and public transportation. And that's going to be a major, major change for a city like Los Angeles at this point in time.
Fabulous, though. Wow. All right. I guess we'll watch and see that. Very excited about having the Olympics come back to the States here. I gotta be honest, I've been in P2 meetings all week, and we're recording here end of August. Foot traffic continues to decline. Retailers are continuing to feel what I would say a little nervous right now when we're headed into, for many of us, unseasonable time. So traffic normally will decline. It goes into winter months. A lot of retailers are worried about cash flow. I think it's going to be a challenging winter for many retailers. And I'm not happy to see that Americans are falling behind on payments on their car. You know, there's an article on here on car repossession. So I'm trying to get retailers motivated to what can we do to bring traffic in the door, but possibly people aren't spending. Jay, just your thoughts. Like, I know you included that article. I'm wondering what automobile repossessions have to do with the bicycle business.
Well, it's just as you state. It was interesting to me that this was an article from mid-July, 16th of July, on car repossessions going up 23%. When I looked at it and I put it in the newsletter, covered it, commented on it, and I was thinking, well, this doesn't quite go with the economic news. The news that broke in August makes sense. The numbers on employment were off. If you might recall, now the government said that their numbers are off by 818,000 workers. Not enough to tip the country into recession, but enough to explain things like these repossessions, in the sense that workers, people, the populace are falling behind in payments. The other thing I didn't report on, by the way, and will in this month's reporter, is that credit card defaults and credit card debt defaults are going up, along with the repossessions. That's simply a sign that more consumers are having extreme difficulty in making the payment at the end of the month on all of these things that they owe on. So again, as the economic news through this month has more or less stabilized, because we went from all of a sudden the markets panicked early August after some of this news came out, including this repossession news, and then stabilized when we got to the middle of the month. And the chairman of the Fed came forward with a statement that said, okay, the rate cuts in rate increases have ceased. We're now on a path where we clearly have to look at rate reductions. That'll come in September. That eased the markets and everything settled down from the standpoint of what the stock markets were doing. It did not change the situation relative to the consumer, however. So to your point about the P2 meetings and bike shops and the store traffic, that this will be a very difficult winter in our opinion. And you're quite correct. Bike shops have to think about everything they can do to not only bring consumers in, we're back to that email discussion, or I'm sorry, that web discussion where consumers are shopping online, and in turn, they will come into touch and feel the product. It goes to the relationships and making sure you've got the right product in the store for you from a profit standpoint, and doing everything to touch your community, to work in your community, to get consumers in. And then once you've got them there, work through a program. And if you're working with a consumer who has got a problem making a car payment, default to the used bike side. And I'm reminded that our good dealer, James, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, talking about the fact that he's got some used bikes down in the basement that they're tagged, but he doesn't put them up on the floor. And when that family comes in that can't afford even a used bike that he's got on the floor, he takes them down there.
Yeah.
Why? The point is he doesn't want them to get out of the store without buying from him, becoming his customer, and then the service work and the accessories and all the things they can afford become the Hattiesburg, Mississippi shop's business, the bike shop's business.
Yeah.
So all of that is correct. I think that the dealers have to be aware tough times are coming. It's going to get worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of things are going to get better, but bike shop trade is going to go through a very tough winter before we come out at the other end of the tunnel. Even if I'm wrong, it doesn't hurt to make sure you're trying to get every consumer in, work for every consumer sale you can get, new or used, and making sure that you're watching your books carefully and you're watching your profitability carefully.
Yeah. hunker down, hunker down.
Hunker down.
One more question for Fred, and then we're going to wrap it up today. Fred, there was an article on dynamic pricing, and I just quickly want to, dynamic pricing, for those who don't know, it's how you vary a price for a product. In particular, let's say there's high demand. So if you talk about your services in the summer, when your services are high demand, it's increasing the cost of your service packages. And then in the winter, when demand is lower, decreasing the cost of your service. The article says consumers mostly oppose dynamic pricing unless the prices are going down, so not up. Makes sense to me. Just Fred, any thoughts, any words of wisdom, caution to retailers who might be considering using any dynamic pricing in their store?
Well, I won't speak to the wisdom part, but I will admit that I laughed when I read that consumers love dynamic pricing when the prices go down and hated it when the prices go up. So I wonder whether this is actually a topic or if this is just something that an article is based on. I mean, it seems obvious to me,
Right.
but the price is the price, and that's one of the points of power that a retailer has, is setting their own price. Regardless of suggested retail price, you have opportunities to price and do variable pricing and all sorts of things. I think it's a mistake, and I don't know, no retailer's going to do this, but to advertise our prices are now higher because dynamic pricing. Well, I don't think the consumer needs to know what the heck dynamic prices even is. Set the price that you need, use SRP if that's what you need to be competitive. And it seems to me that's the two major ways of looking at business for retail is cost control and margin control. And margin is largely a price focused thing. So I don't think the bike business needs to worry about dynamic pricing other than the prices have been dynamic forever.
I called it a sale.
I read the article.
We're having a sale.
Like, all right, I guess I'll ask this. All right, well, let's go with some specific advice for listeners for September 2024. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Overall focus for retailers when it comes to e-bikes.
I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. Buy certified product, sell certified product, make sure your staff in the store understands the appropriate protocols for battery charging, storage, and maintenance, and instruct your customers accordingly when you sell the bikes. This lithium-ion battery crisis is not over, not by a long shot. Again, I subscribe to all the publications. I read about them every day. I got a call this morning about another one. So you need to be careful. These are high energy storage devices. Energy released in an uncontrolled fashion is dangerous, but with the proper precautions in place, it's safe and dependable and reliable for our application.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike, as always. Jay, if we have suppliers, sales representatives listening, thoughts for them?
At this point, we're going into September. We've already talked about the market, issues that are going on relative to profitability, consumers coming into bike shops, etc. I think the suppliers need to take a look at relationships very carefully, make sure that they are not putting together the partnership that is best for them as opposed to a relationship that is good for both them and the retailers are doing business with, because they need those retailers. So I think transparency, honesty, as I've said before, and working with the market, working with dealers to make sure that we're taking the best possible actions we can to provide the best and safest products for our consumers.
I like that. I thought the relationship piece might come in there. Fred, favorite question, focus for retailers for September.
Well, so this will sound a little out there probably, and this is, I'm going to try to thread the needle and not get political at all, but I think there was a lesson from the Democratic National Convention related to bicycle retail. The Democrats positioned themselves as joyous, that we are all in this together. We are all citizens. We love our country. And they didn't get bogged down too much, at least in my view, of all the issues that divide, the women's rights to birth control and abortion and immigration. They covered that, but they had joy in their hearts, and So it struck me as they were doing sales 1A that we used to run seminars at Interbike on, is that, you know, Sam Dantzler once said, and I still remember this, I think I've cited him before, sales is nothing more than a transfer of enthusiasm, you know, and so it's the same thing that we have. The Democrat Party was able to get enthusiasm transfer independent of the features and benefits of the product. And that's exactly what I think ties directly to the bicycle retailer, is that, yeah, you know your features and benefits, you know what to sell that way, but that's not how to approach a sale. You need to get people happy and joyous so they spend their money with you. And that's, I thought that was a pretty interesting way to look at it without being political, I hope.
Yeah, no, I love that. I like this last question because I get a little bit of each of your personalities and we get your expert opinions. Gentlemen, such a wealth of information. Thank you always. Every month you come on, you share your time, you share your expertise with our listeners. You help us all stay up to date. It's really important to the NBDA, and I know it's important to our listeners. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.